as a YouTuber that has been doing this for 2 years, 1 year full time, you know what videos are good. You know what videos are gonna get the views. I know how-to guides. I know videos about Odin. I know videos about Loki. I know videos about Freya. Videos about just like how to get started. Those are the videos that are gonna get views and bring people to the channel. But when I sit back and I think about why I'm doing this, I'm not doing this for views. I'm not doing this to become #1. I'm doing this to share my journey. And part of that is sharing things that I really think are important and need to be more of a conversation. And so that's why in this video, I'm going to be talking about something that isn't enough of a conversation in our modern Norse pagan heathen world. And that is the concept of storytelling. Now, you might be thinking, well, of course, we talk about storytelling, the prose and poetic edda all the time. But it goes so much further than that. It's not just storytelling in the past. It's understanding why storytelling is important, why storytelling still is important today and should be honored as one of the most important aspects of being a Norse pagan. And I think it's one of those things with the modern age that the idea of storytelling is really disappearing. Yes, we have books, but we have TV now. We have TV shows, streaming, movies, and not just that, social media. I mean, on Instagram, it's literally called Your Story, but it's funny and ironic because it only lasts 24 hours. Is that not a perfect analogy for how our modern world is? Is that your story on Instagram, your story only lasts 24 hours. It only means 24 hours. Yes, you can have highlights and things like that. Look at the highlights from my story. But at the end of the day, our stories have become less important in our modern age because it's all digital. We share everything. We do almost all of our typing, all of our writing, all of our reading online nowadays. And this isn't going to turn into a tirade about the internet, even though I do have my war against the internet and I believe it will be the death of us all, but we are talking through it right now, so I have to accept it for what it is. But the argument I want to make in this video is that storytelling really is one of the key components of Norse paganism. To me, it really is the foundation and the backbone. I mean, the foundation can be found in the fact that basically all we know is from the poetic and prose edda, and yes, even from the sagas of the Icelanders, which I have right here. So yes, you have the poetic, the prose, and the saga of the Icelanders. Now notice I treated the prose edda less favorably than the poetic edda. Poetic edda is great, but prose edda, we'll throw it back there. The point being that if we didn't have these books, even the prose edda, which is now behind the couch, probably catching on fire on my lighting back there, is if we didn't have these, we would have nothing. We would have no faith. I mean, think about how many pagan religions, how many, first culture religions out there from the native beliefs of all of our pagan ancestors. Think how many are lost. How many gods are lost? How many stories are lost because they didn't get written down? But what that also means is there are so many stories to who we are as people that we don't know. And storytelling is at its core one of the most important things about being human. It's our history, it's our culture, it's our faith. Storytelling is everything to being human. One of the main things that made us who we are today, besides our opposable thumbs, is our ability to communicate. And not just communicate, eventually write down those stories to share information. The reason we have phones, computers, this building, everything, is because we were sharing knowledge and sharing information and building on one another to create the society we have now, which is arguably good or bad. But it doesn't change the fact that storytelling is important. Truly, the way I look at the prose and poetic edda, yes, there's many different ways to look at it. This is how I personally view the stories that we have written down about the Norse gods. These are stories that grandparents told their grandchildren, our wise people told the people in their village to give them inspiration, to give them strength. It was the way that the ancestors explained the universe. It was the way they explained science. It was a way to explain our origins. It was a way to explain where we went after we died. It was a way to explain the weird phenomenon that happens in our life. It was a way to describe why certain things feel fated. These stories were given names. These stories were given attributes from the cultures and the societies that created them. And even in the Norse mythology, even within Scandinavia, we have lost so much. I mean, honestly, we probably lost 99% of the stories that used to be told about the gods and the people that followed them. Now, sure, gods, maybe they're aliens floating around there in outer space. Maybe they're metaphysical beings. Maybe they're just manifestations of ourselves. That doesn't change the fact that they were written down for a reason. Even if you think the gods are just a part of yourself, even if you think that the ancestors thought that as well, they still wrote it down for a reason, to teach a lesson on how to become more attuned with who you are. And if the gods were these weird ancient aliens that came down, they were trying to write it down or trying to orally share it so people could remember this crazy event. Again, it doesn't matter what you think. At the end of the day, it leads to storytelling. And that's pretty darn cool because it really is at its core who we are. My argument being is that this was so important to the ancestors of the past. This is so important to the fact that we have culture and religion now, especially as Norse pagans. If we didn't have this written down information that was once oral stories that were shared around a campfire, we would literally have no faith. And what I would love to see, and what I really want people to get from my channel and from this video, is that we need to start becoming storytellers again. And I'm not talking about Instagram. Now, I may hate technology, and I may hate what social media is doing to us, but I do think there is value there. And that is the second half of this video and what we need to do now. We need to take the tools we have. We need to take something like Instagram that, yes, has its 24-hour stories, and use it to our advantage. And I feel like that's what I've done with the Wisdom of Odin, is I've shared my story as a Norse pagan, as honestly and truthfully as I can through everything that has happened to me along this journey. This YouTube also stands as that. Yes, it's a way I can help teach others, at least share with them what I've learned and what I've been able to dig up myself. In a way, it's sharing my story even further. And I want to encourage anyone watching this to share their story as well. Now, whether that's through Instagram, whether it's through YouTube, whether it was through poetry, whatever means it is, find a way to record your modern saga. And that's why I do have Jason Rawls' books as well here, which I did do an interview with him if you're interested in watching it on this channel. So I have his two books here. We have The Chaos Path and The Oath, which are his poetry books. They're very small, but you can find them on Amazon. And something that is truly amazing to me is that you can read the first book of poetry. Is it perfect? No. But at the very least, we have a Norse pagan who just was on the internet who's like, I'm going to write poetry. And he did it. That's amazing. And then he wrote his second book. And I can honestly say that The Chaos Path and the poetry in here is a huge step up from the first book he wrote. Whatever you do creatively is not going to be perfect the first time you do it. Look at my first few videos. They are not perfect. And I go back and watch them. I'm like, Jacob, what were you doing? But what matters is the fact that I went out and I hit record on that first video, and it has evolved into what the Wisdom of Odin has become now. And so I really, truly believe that if we want to carry this faith into the future, we need to become storytellers once again. And we need to make sure that those stories are remembered in a way that can be concretely moved forward throughout history, so we don't end up with something that we're working with now, and that is a very small amount of information. Now we can take books like this, and we can take other writers and other authors, like my friend Blade Kirkland, who wrote his own book as well. Again, is it perfect? No, but he wrote his own book and his own translation and his own ideas on how the god stories play out. That's amazing, and he's working on his second book. That is truly amazing to me, that we have people that are not working at a book publisher. They don't work for, Barnes and Nobles or anything like that, or the big, pagan book publishers out there. These are self-published books. That is amazing to me, and I absolutely love it. Now, something else I think that can be taken away from this storytelling conversation is the around the fire storytelling. And this is something that I really want to start bringing into the gatherings more, is the transference of stories about the faith, about the people living the faith today around a campfire story. And something I really want to see more of is something I started actually at Kentucky Yule last year. And I told the story of another member of our community who did something incredible at the fall gathering previously. And I told everyone around that fire that I want you to tell this story. I want you to take this story, add your own flair, add your own, embellishments to it, and tell this to other people so they can hear the story of the Beast of Odin. And this is something even Jason Rawls wrote about in a poem as well. It's not published, but he's written a poem about it because he was there. And so I got around the fire, I got animated, and I was telling the story of Caleb in the community, who's also on the podcast, who, did a 9-day fast for Odin to resemble him hanging from the world tree. And then he put a deer skull on his face and had a shamanic drum and was just in the woods connecting with Odin, leading up to an Odin ritual. Now, of course, this wasn't written down in the poetic and prose edda of a thing that you can do to connect with Odin. He created this himself with the knowledge that he knew about Odin and what Odin did. And what it ended up being was an incredible ritual that got everyone fired up about just honoring the old gods. It's truly incredible what this did and the magic that it created. And so of course I want to tell this story because there can be comedy to it, because people were encountering him in the woods with this deer skull on his face and getting scared and freaked out, like, oh my gosh, what is this guy doing? I remember coming around the corner and he was just standing there near a tree, and it freaked me out. And so that becomes part of the story, and I get, just get animated with it, and I like jumped to the ground and like smacked my butt on the ground, and just had a great time, had everyone laughing, but it also taught a lesson. And that's something that the stories also did. Whether or not they were really about these divine beings, they still taught a lesson that was important to the people that told these stories.
In the middle of the 9 realms is the mighty ash tree Yggdrasil. Now this tree's branches extend over the entirety of the 9 realms. Branches dive into the well of Urd, and that is the place that holds the most powerful beings in the universe. 3 of these beings are the maidens of the Norns. For 9 days and nights, he hung there bleeding, teetering from the realm of life and death. Now, on that 9th night, he received no help, no food, no drink, no aid from anybody. And on that 9th night, he looked down into the shadowy waters below and saw shimmers of shapes and signs that he knew nothing of until that moment.
So to start wrapping all this together into a nice, pretty package, the core of this, the main thing that I want you to take away is that storytelling is one of the most important, if not the most important, parts of this faith, because without it, we would have nothing. Secondly, we need to start recording our stories for the generations to come. We need to start writing them down in books. We need to start creating more YouTube channels, sharing our experiences honestly and truthfully with the people around the world. And so that they can see that 1, other Norse pagans are not alone, and 2, this is a real and living faith today. And we wanted to see go a dozen more generations where people can learn from us what we're trying to do now. And thirdly, I want us to start sharing stories around a fire again, just like our ancestors did. I've been really passionate, really fiery about this because I really want to show you how much I care about this as a subject for Norse paganism. But some cleanup topics here at the very end before we actually conclude this video. Of course, I do recommend, and again, one of the main backbones of this channel is take the things we know from the past, honor the information that we have from the prose and poetic Edda, the saga of the Icelanders, and what we can tell about the worship and veneration of these gods in the past. Make sure we honor that information. And then take that with your own personal experiences and form that new story and share it. I mean, it's one of those things where again, honesty. We can't say, someone can't come forward and say, no, Odin's ravens were actually seagulls, and then write it down in a dozen books and have a dozen other people write it in books, and then all of a sudden there's this weird faction of people out there that think Odin's ravens are actually seagulls. That is where it goes too far, and this is where honesty needs to stand true. We can't change what happened in the past. We can't change what is the reality of the gods. But what we can do is share our stories and our experiences, like the Beast of Odin that was influenced by a story in the past and became something now. That's something that can happen. And that's, again, the reason I'm saying this morning is because I know us as humans, especially as us as humans online, we take one small bit of information and then we transform it and morph it into something that it's so far away than it originally was. I mean, it's like this weird game of telephone. Again, Raven, it's like Odin's ravens are Hugin and Munin. And then after it transmits itself through, 14 different storytellers, all of a sudden we have Odin has 3 dogs named Spike, Fluffy, and one is a seagull that rides a reindeer. And it's like, how did this happen? This is happening on a global scale right now. And, it's going to be something that as a community, as Norse pagans, we need to draw that line in the sand for ourselves and we don't cross it. Is that we're honest about our experiences and we're honest in respecting the past. The very last thing I'll leave you with here is within the Havamal, and it's probably the best way we understand the afterlife within the Norse mythos, is that cattle die, men die, you yourself will also die. The only thing that does not die is one who wins a good reputation. And of course, to have a good reputation, you need someone to record it. And that's why skalds were so important in the past to the kings and jarls to record their story, which we can read most of them now. So storytelling, getting a good reputation, and being remembered for the things you do are so important to who we are as people and who we are as Norse pagans. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it's been inspiring to you. Get out there, form our modern saga, honor the past, and start telling stories once again. Thank you so much, and until the hall, Skål.